So what's happening today is I've created a nice little exercise based around some finger picking. Ultimately, it's a progressive thing. So we're going to start with some lovely chords. So everyone's going to go away with a nice chord sequence, and then it's going to build up to something a little bit more complex, but it's going to be all based around patterns. So the idea is that what you're learning you can then apply and to anything else, but also you can take a little bit further, because I tend to really think about finger picking and fingerstyle in rhythmic patterns that are transferable. So you learn one pattern with one particular technique, for example, and then you can apply that in a million different other situations. Let's get started with actually playing it. We'll start off with a little screen share, I think. Here we go. This is what we're working with today. We're going to zoom in and have a look at those chords first of all. Oh, it's not the best zooming action there, is it really? We've got a D5, a C sus2, a G, and back to our D5. Now where it says G, really, it's kind of not a G as well. It's just it's built from a G. So we'll come to that as we get there. So a D5 is a D, but we're just looking at 3 strings. So you can indeed just fret 2 strings and have an open D. Now finger-wise, it's a bit of an interesting one here because of the next chords that we're going to. I'd suggest you play this D5 with your second and fourth finger. Okay, so your second finger, 2nd fret G string, and little finger, 3rd fret B string. Okay, that's what I would suggest. And then you've got the low D as the root. Okay, now we are only going to be playing at the beginning of each bar these 3 strings, the D, G, and B. Okay, later in the bar we're going to be playing some other notes as well, but for now it's just going to be that D, G, and B, and it's going to be in your picking hand. You're going to be using thumb, index, and middle. Okay, so just get a little comfy with that, and just remember I'm suggesting you're using fingers 2 and 4 to play that, which will make sense when we move to this next chord, which is a C sus2. How do we do that? Well, we leave our little finger where it is, which is nice and convenient, and then put our 3rd finger on to the 3rd fret A string, taking away our 2nd finger. And in our picking hand, we're going to play the A string with our thumb, the G string with our index finger, and the B string with our middle finger. Okay, so we've had D5, and we've had C sus2. Now you could strum these chords if you wanted to. If you were to do that, I would miss out the D string on this C sus2. But for now, let's just try and think about them as finger picking. Now, when we get to the next one, which is called a G in this context, it is kind of a G because it's coming from a G chord, but actually just to be really lazy in our playing, which is nice to do sometimes, especially on a Tuesday evening, we're going to get our 2nd finger and put it on the 2nd fret on the A string, leaving our little finger where it is. So you're covering 2 strings, the A and the B. We've got that open G again. In our picking hand, we're using thumb, index, and middle, playing A, G, and B. Okay, so hopefully you can see how that comes from a G. You can, in fact, if you just hold down a G chord there and play those same strings, you end up with the same thing. However, we're cheating a little bit. We're just making it easy on our fingers. The less we have to think about this hand, the more we can think about this hand, which is fantastic. Then we're going to go back to D5. Okay, that is our chord sequence. Everything that we're building on here is going to be based on that. Ta-da! Fantastic. Right. I'm just going to have a little recap of those chords to make sure everyone's got them and they're comfortable. And then we'll get stuck into the finger picking around it. So we have 3 chords in a cycle of 4. We start with D5. We're using 2nd and 4th finger on 2nd fret G, little finger 3rd fret on the B, and in the picking hand, thumb, index and middle on D, G and B. That's a D5. I'll probably just refer to it as a D when we're going around to keep things simple. Then our 2nd chord is a C sus2. We take away our 2nd finger and we put our 3rd finger, A string 3rd fret, A string 3rd fret, yeah, leaving our little finger where it is and using thumb, index, middle on A, G and B. So always these 3 strings, okay? And then moving down to what we're calling a G, because it kind of comes from that G. We're going to put our 2nd finger, 2nd fret, A string, again leaving our little finger where it is, taking away our 3rd. And then all we have to do is move our 2nd finger down to the 2nd fret G string to make our D5 again. Cool. So D5, C sus2, and then a bit of a G. Wonderful. I'm going to go through those one more time. D5, C sus2, G. Wow. Cool. Okay. If you're a super beginner, you could just stop at that point and, well, I say super beginner, maybe just you're not particularly spent much time in doing finger picking at all and you just want to work on your chords. If you want to sit with those chords for the rest of the session, that's totally cool. It's always going to work on 2 beats to each chord. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, and remember I'm always using thumb, index, and middle. All right, we change the bass note. On the D, it's the D string. On the C and the G, it's on the A string. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and a 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. Last time, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Fantastic. Okay, so let's look at the finger picking with that. We can leave that behind. If you want to just stick there, that's totally cool. But if you're interested in the finger picking, this is what is going to happen. Okay, please just look at one at a time. It would really help me if you would perfect each one before moving on, or at least spend as much time with each one as you can, so that I can really explain the principles behind why we're doing this. Okay, so we're going to see a simple pattern of 2 quavers and then 4 semiquavers. Okay, that's what is going to be happening over and over again. The first 2 quavers are going to be the bass note and then the rest of the chord. So that's going to be thumb, index and middle. That theme is going to come through over and over again. So I'm going to play through that without the semiquavers. Okay, so I'm going to just play through these 2, then these 2, and these 2, etc. Okay, so we should have D and then G and B, and then A and G and B, and then A and G and B, and then D and G and B. Okay, so that is going to be happening in every pattern anyway. However, what's going to be characteristic about this is our semiquavers, or our 16th notes in between, okay? And it's just going to be always a repeated mirrored pattern each time. So in this little example, we're going to take our 16th notes and we're going to play thumb and then index. Okay, so this pattern essentially is a thumb and index pattern, if you like. First off, we go D, G, D, G. And then when we get to the C, we go A, G, A, G. And then when we get to the G, we go A, G, A, G. And then back to the D, G, D, G. So it should sound, played very slowly, something like this. Played at speed. Okay. Now, remember we're building on this pattern, so we want to get it super duper solid. It would be really great if you can already start experimenting with the dynamics. So the beginning of playing the chord, the dum da, is really nice and bright, and then see if you can maybe just tail off with those 16th notes. Now, if you wanted to give this a go with a plectrum, that's actually going to work totally fine. I'm thinking from a fingerstyle perspective. But it's going to work exactly the same. Now, you'll also find that there's this nice sort of strumming-like motion of down and up that starts to come as you're a little bit more confident with that. If you can really play on that and bring that out more and more, it's going to make the rhythm of everything super, super flowing. If you're quite rigid and you've got maybe a hand that's really glued there, you're actually always going to struggle to play really well in time. But if you can actually get loads of movement of down, up, it's really going to come to life and have this lovely flow. So as a sort of an exercise, actually just over accentuating the movement. That can be really, really helpful. Fantastic. Okay, let's move down to the next exercise using exactly the same principles. So the same rhythm, same chords, but now we're going to turn it on its head, and rather than having this lovely continuity of down and up, we're now going to, in the 16th note, play thumb, ring, middle, index, okay, on each chord. We're just going to adjust the bass note. So for the D, for the C, for the G, which actually can be quite tricky to get nice and even. So you've got that same thumb, index and middle at the beginning, and then you're going thumb, ring, middle and index, dum, da, 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 but then nice and even. The tendency is to have a bit of a, or maybe index and middle were much quicker. We want them to be nice and solid and nice and even. Fantastic. So what we're going to start doing now is start mixing them up. that time round we just went from version or exercise 2 to exercise 3, and this time we're going to start just messing with them so that maybe we put them together. We go from the D from exercise 2 to the C from exercise 3. Sorry, but that hopefully can start to sort of link together some of your fingerstyle skills, because if we can always see fingerstyle patterns and finger picking patterns as very much that exactly as they're described as patterns, there's always some kind of continuity in them. Okay, it's just a simple case of taking the same rhythm and shifting it to different fingers. It's having that ability to do that. Now, this one that we've come across straight away, where we're moving from that down and up of thumb and index and then moving to thumb, ring, middle and index, is actually kind of as hard as it really gets, because everything else can have the same type of movement where you keep going down and up. So if you can get this really confidently now, everything is going to be super easy. So to make that happen, we're just going to play this round a whole bunch of times. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to go from here to here and back round again. And you can join me and play exactly the same thing. You could play the chords, or you could give it a go with a bit of soloing, which is really lovely to do in a D mixolydian or an E minor scale, if you happen to know one of those, because that's exactly the same thing. Cool. Okay, so as I say, this is just an opportunity for you to either just play along and enjoy, or get super good at this change using the same rhythm but changing the movement, which is a really great thing to know. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Wonderful, fantastic. Okay, so hopefully everyone's feeling confident with the bit that they wanted to do. Maybe it's just actually playing the chords. Maybe it's pulling together these two patterns. So what happens next is we bring in a little string slap, which is a kind of a simple development in some senses. We have this. We just work between exercise 3 and exercise 4 here, okay, hopefully you'll be able to appreciate that actually being able to bring in this string slap can just change your playing, okay, from playing a simplistic pattern that sounds exactly the same to a simplistic pattern that drops in a drum beat, okay. So we go, for example, worlds apart. So let's have a little reminder of how we do this string slap. I think would be the most helpful thing for me to show you here, okay? So just remember that a string slap is a turning of your wrist, all right? It's always good to refresh this movement anyway. So it's not doing this with your thumb, it's just turning your wrist as if playing a downstroke with your thumb, which in the previous exercise we were doing anyway, because we were going thumb, ring, middle, index. But now we're just turning our wrist in like this. So da 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 da. Okay, so turning that wrist. There's going to be a degree of sort of bringing your hand back towards the guitar like this, but really you want to avoid that too much and think more of a turning motion. Okay, and once you've got that, try and hone the sound of it as well, okay? It's not so nice to have a real, and then a shum, and then the next time you can barely hear it, all right? Drummers spend, well, a lifetime trying to make that snare drum hits exactly the same, and you kind of want to do the same thing. Maybe not a lifetime, but you know what I mean. Okay, so just breaking this new exercise down, we play at the beginning like normal, and then we string slap by turning our wrist, aiming for the lower strings. We don't have to be too sort of picky about it, just making this clicky sound, and then we're going ring, middle, index, and then next chord, string slap, ring, middle, index, play the chord, string slap, ring, middle, index. Cool. Now if you're using an anchor, you're gonna, as in using your little finger, you might find that a little bit harder rather than having a nice free hand. You probably, if you are using an anchor, you probably want to make sure that you come away from the body of the guitar when you do that string slap. And as you get better at that, probably start to hear how you can have different snare drums. You can have these lovely little delicate just clicks. And then you can have full sort of snare drums with a little bit of bass in them. And that's a lot to do with where you hit on the guitar, but also how hard you're doing it. So really try and hone in and find the sound that you want, and then keep it consistent, all right? Because that's what's going to make it sound super cool. Okie dokie. So what we're going to do now is just give you an opportunity to get super good at that. And we're just going to go around the highlighted bit. So we have playing that exact same pattern without the string slap, and then the exact same pattern with the string slap. All right, here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Cool. Fantastic. All right. I hope that's a nice little pattern to play. Just that addition of bringing that snare drum makes the absolute world of difference. Okay, cool. We're building up now to playing them all together. This one here is getting a little bit percussive. All right. What's happening is we're keeping exactly the same motion, but actually we've gone back to this down, up thing. All these X's are muted. This first X at the beginning is a string slap. So actually it's kind of a little bit of the one before as well. If you take the first 3 notes, you'd have the chord played like that, down and up, and then a string slap. What's happening after that is a simple up, down, up, but muted in the fretting hand. I'm going to take away the tab for a second. Okay, so what kind of happens is we have to relax the chord and essentially stop anything from being fretted halfway, or not halfway through the bar, straight away on the second beat of the bar. So we have down, up, slap. At that point you want to relax your fingers, kind of keep the shape a little bit underneath to make it easy to go back, but they're just sort of lazy fingers. After that slap we go up, down, up. When we start to speed that up, really starts to come to life. So what do we have to do again? We play the chord, bass, chord, slap, and then just relax in the fretting hand, okay? I'm taking the pressure off here and I'm sort of letting my third finger come in and just mute all those strings, all right? Try and think right back to when you were first beginning on the guitar, and actually you probably spent a lot of time making that sound by just like putting your fingers in the wrong place. You kind of got to go back there. It's just having messy fingers relaxed on the guitar. They don't have to be precise, they just have to be on the strings making contact. Okay, and then we play up with our index just on the G, so we get that sound, and then we go down probably on the D string, I'd say, for the D, on the thumb, and then up. So slap, up, down, up. Okay, so you can just practice the percussive bit on its own. Okay, that's our 16ths or our semiquavers. Okay. Then we go to our next chord, do exactly the same thing. Now, with our thumb, rather than playing the D, we could play the A, but it doesn't really matter that much. Okay, so we're playing our chord, and then our percussive bits, we release our chord, and then we have slap, up, down, up. Then we go to our third chord, and then back to the D. Okay, if you're struggling with that, it's probably best just to look at the percussive bit, all right? Ignore that first chord at the beginning and just relax your fingers and slap up, down, up. In fact, you can probably get it up pretty quick and then start to put the chord in. Okay, I'll just bring the tab up for you guys again, just in case you want to look at it. There we go. Great. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just play that round. Yeah, we'll probably start a little slower, maybe start to build up speed. But if you're struggling with it, as I say, just focus on the percussive bit and then glue it together a bit later. 1, 2, 3, 4. Fantastic. Okay, let's skip to the next one and then we'll make some little comparisons and show you how you can glue them all together. Right, what's happening here is a bit of control of your chord. Okay, so if you remember a little earlier, I said when you mute those strings in your fretting hand, all right, it's super cool to be able to have sort of the shape ready to go underneath, rather than going from to sort of a flat hand like this, for the exact reason of what happens here, because just at the end of the 4/16 notes or semiquavers, we have the chord come back. Which is a really common thing to happen. So it's crucial that we're ready to go with that chord. So we're able to start with the chord. As we come down to do a string slap, we go back to our sort of muted position and then play our slap, up, down, and then the chord comes back. And then we change immediately. Go to muted, slap, up, down, chord, next chord. Okay, it's a little bit tricky, that one actually, or hopefully it is anyway. But as I say, the most important bit to help you there is to be able to have the chord ready. So when you're muting, you're not just using a sort of a big hand, all right? You're just ready with the chord just to form it again. All right. So all we're going to do now is I'm just going to play around these two exercises, and I'm just going to blend them together a little bit. All right, and you can play along as and how you wish, but hopefully to give you an example of some real subtle variation. So sometimes we could squeeze this chord in, sometimes not. All right, we don't even really have to think about it that much. If you're struggling to do this exercise 6, I would just focus on exercise 5 for now. But I'm just going to hopefully show you just a tiny bit of variation, how it can bring a bit of life. We'll go around a few times, and as I say, you can just have a noodle around however you want, or you can use the E minor scale or D Mixolydian to solo over the top. And then we'll stop, and I'm going to try and sort of gel them all together a little bit and show you how to make sense of them as a sort of a pattern that you can apply to everything else. And then we can do some improvising over top. Anyway, here we go, just playing it round and round. Let's see what happens. Cool. Right, so hopefully you can hear it sort of starts to come to life a little bit. We almost start to get a bit of a melody. And some really nice syncopation as well, but it all comes from that left hand, or I shouldn't say left hand, I should say fret hand control, because really in my right hand things aren't changing so much. I'm holding that rhythm all the time. So what we want to be able to do, the ultimate aim, is to play that exact same pattern, but to be the exact same rhythmic pattern, but to be able to switch between the different finger picking patterns. And really, when we learn a song, that tends to be what is happening anyway. If we look at it and it's really super complicated and kind of like, why does this sort of change so much, or you're remembering all these tiny little details, if you look at it really closely, the likelihood is that it's exactly the same rhythmic pattern, it's just the fingers are switching around. And what happens, well, for me anyway, is that those things become really automatic, and you're just in a rhythm and a flow and a groove, and your fingers then just make these little thoughtless changes, and kind of the niceness just happens by accident almost. Sorry if that sounds a little bit silly, but that's the best way I can describe it. So a way of getting into doing that is to do an exercise like this and to work through each one after the other, and then kind of let them start to melt into one, all right? Which kind of will happen by mistake anyway, right? So if we work through exercise 2 and then 3 and 4 and 5 and 6, you'll probably start to get them a little bit muddled up. I know I will. And actually, that is when things are starting to become a little bit intuitive and you're just going on autopilot a little bit and you're focusing on the rhythm rather than the mechanics of what you're playing. It's kind of a shifting attention thing, basically. Being able to practice the same thing enough so that you can just forget about what you're doing and you're just playing a rhythm, and you can do these tiny little unconscious changes and everything starts to come to life a little bit. Let's just play through like this. See what happens. Wonderful. Okay, so hopefully you can start to feel, I don't know, a little bit more comfortable with it. Maybe you're making sort of little happy mistakes or happy accidents where you're doing the same thing from the other bit and they start to blend in with each other. I would say the next stage of that is then to take away notes, all right, and see as if we've got exactly the same rhythm, but maybe we just miss one out. We could miss out that note, for example. We are venturing into Sweet Home Alabama territory, but okay, so rather than the idea of just taking the same pattern and always just changing it around but keeping the same rhythm, with any finger picking pattern we can just do the very, very simplistic thing of not playing on one of the movements. In the example of this one though, we can keep doing the same movement but just maybe not make contact with the strings. Or switch it around. There's a million different combinations, but they can all come from this exact same idea and pattern, which is a lovely way to think about with finger picking. Cool. All right. Well, hopefully, at the very least, you've gone away with a nice little chord sequence and a couple of little finger picking patterns to play with. Ultimately, though, the biggest goal that you could take away from there is that you're working with this sort of symmetrical, or not symmetrical, that's the complete, well, no, it is kind of symmetrical, isn't it? But the idea of a continuous rhythmic pattern and just sort of translating that to different fingers. It's kind of fingerstyle freedom, if you like. All right, we're going to play through one more time to have a little jam. If you want to do some soloing over it, I've mentioned the scales a couple of times, but I'll give you a little bit more info on that if you want to give it a last little go. So this is based around D Mixolydian, which is something we talked about Mixolydian a couple of sessions ago, I believe. So it means that it's the D scale, but it's got a flattened seventh, so it's a little bit more bluesy. I say bluesy, it's kind of, we talked about the emotion that comes with it last time as well. It's somewhere else, I don't know. It's kind of bluesy, kind of folksy, kind of happy, kind of melancholic as well. However, you can see it in a much more simplistic way and just use an E minor scale if you know any E minor scales. For example, the E minor pentatonic. Okay, or any E minor scale. I'm going to just teach you a little very simplistic shape that can work really nicely. We're going to start on the D. So we've got an open D, 2 on the D, and then 4 on the D. Okay, and then up to the open G, second or 2 on the G, and then 4 on the G. Okay, so we've got that open string already, and then 3 on the B. Okay. Alright, that can be a nice little shape. It's not quite a scale as we know it, but it can work really beautifully around those chords. Alright, otherwise, do whatever you fancy. We'll just play around for like 2 minutes more. I'll get the chords back up for you and then we'll come to an end there. I'll just zoom out a little bit as well so you can see the chords at the top. All right then, here we go. 3, 4. Fantastic. I hope you enjoyed that, everyone. Lovely to see you all playing along in so many different ways as well. I shall stop recording. Thank you.